Hello and welcome to Useful Idiots Monday Morning, where we watch the Sunday morning news show so that you do not have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. Good Monday morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Great to start the week with you and some of the most corrupt people on corporate TV.
That's true.
Our website is usefulidiotspodcast.com. Go there to support the show. Keep us going and get bonus content.
Yeah. You know, it reminds us, you often say it's great to start the week off with some of the worst people in corporate media. It reminds me of, remember Keith Olbermann used to do this thing on his MSNBC show where he was like, welcome to the worst people in the world, a segment. So, I mean, I don't want to embarrass us by linking us to Keith Olbermann, but I feel like.
Well, funnily enough, the same people who Keith Olbermann used to denounce as the worst people in the world later became his heroes during like the Russiagate era when Democrats turned a full neocon. Like, so for example, when he was on TV, it was like the Bush administration, Dick Cheney, they were the worst people in the world. But then come the Trump administration, when all of a sudden being a neocon was the way to challenge Donald J. Trump, Dick Cheney and others were the best people in the world. Hence why people like Rachel Maddow, and maybe Keith Olbermann was there too, recently went to Dick Cheney's funeral.
Oh yeah, I wonder if they did go. They used to be really good friends. They could go like as a date.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a great collection of people honoring Dick Cheney.
Yeah,
the late Dick Cheney. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And make sure you like. Thanks a lot for the people who've already liked. In fact, someone very enthusiastically not only liked but expressed that they love me and you, Aaron. So that's great. I mean, but again, that's above and beyond. I mean, that's some real patriotism. And here we go. I'm going to give a big shout out to Ahaga Mama. But you guys, all you have to do is like. If you want to be total useful idiot patriots, you can like and love. But the bar is pretty low. Just give this stream a like.
All right. Well, let's get to our weekly recap from Meet the Depressed.
Good Sunday morning. President Trump is escalating his immigration crackdown, vowing to permanently pause migration from what he calls third world countries. It comes after this week's ambush attack on 2 National Guard members just blocks away from the White House, leaving one dead and the other still fighting for his life. The troops stationed in the nation's capital as part of Mr. Trump's federal military deployment. The shooting suspect worked alongside U.S. troops in Afghanistan, then came to the United States after America's chaotic withdrawal in 2021.
What did he do alongside U.S. troops in Afghanistan? He actually was deployed to a CIA unit and would accompany U.S. forces in raiding villages and quite possibly witness the slaughter of civilians by U.S. forces.
Right.
I don't know. That's just some important information, I think, to keep in mind. Some context here.
Wow, I'm so surprised that they didn't provide that context on Meet the Press or any of the other shows.
Well, it's a rare oversight.
Yeah, rare oversight, yeah. I mean, this is an example of chickens coming home to roost, as Malcolm X described it. Chicken troops coming home to roost.
Well, it's just a thing where it's like if you invade and occupy a foreign country for 20 years, and by the way, for those who aren't familiar with the war in Afghanistan, the U.S. kept occupying it and kept escalating, with the so-called surge and so forth, even though they were told by their own top military officials, we have no chance of winning here. This is just this country is just too out of our control. And they kept doubling down because they just didn't want to admit failure. Finally, they admitted failure under Joe Biden and had that chaotic withdrawal. And in the process, they brought back people who had, worked alongside them, like this shooting suspect here. And I don't know exactly what happened with him. We don't know. But the point is, when you invade and occupy foreign countries, not only does it bring horrible things to the foreign country, it also brings bad things at home as well.
Yeah. Well, someone in the comments wrote, in other words, he was with us. And, it's interesting. I've already cited this song, but sometimes songs are so useful. We have to cite them again. It reminds me of that Pink song, What About Us? And this is really applicable here. What about us? What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever afters? What about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about trust? What about us?
Well, thanks, Katie, for for familiarizing with more with the Pink catalog, which I'm not very familiar with. So
Yeah, it's a pretty great
always,
song. Yeah.
always good to hear from Pink. And
Wilson,
yeah.
put that in the album, in the mashup.
Suspect was granted asylum by the Trump administration in April of this year. President Trump is now ordering all green card holders from what his administration has deemed countries of concern to be re-examined.
He went cuckoo. I mean, he went nuts. And that happens, too. It happens too often with these people. You see them. But look, this is how they come in. This is how they're standing on top of each other. And that's an airplane. There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens to them.
I mean, that's kind of an interesting, Trump almost sounds like us. What about us? Don't worry, I won't cite that for the third time. But, they go cuckoo. I wonder what makes them go cuckoo. Either they're cuckoo when we work with them, or, and that's part of the reason we work with them, because it's always useful to have like sociopaths on our side. But the other possibility is that they become cuckoo working for us.
Yeah, and whatever happened with him, whatever happened on his journey, I mean, we do know that he was working with the CIA in a unit that conducted night raids, terrorizing innocent civilians. We don't know exactly what he witnessed, what he was there for, but the bottom line is, when you invade foreign countries and occupy them, horrible things happen. And it's called, blowback is the term.
Right.
And it's a term we'd be hearing a lot more about in corporate media if they're willing to just report the basic facts about what happens when you invade and occupy foreign countries. Instead, our invasions and occupations are constantly whitewashed. And I think the coverage of this Afghan national is the latest illustration of that.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're welcome, people. Another song comes to mind with the cuckoo reference. This is by the great Magnetic Fields. The song is called Absolutely Cuckoo, and it says, "Don't fall in love with me yet. We've only recently met. True, I'm in love with you, but you might decide I'm a nut. Give me a week or two to go absolutely cuckoo. Then when you see your error, then you can flee in terror." Would have been good advice.
Well, when I hear cuckoo, I just hear I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. That's the obvious cuckoo reference for me. Other people might look to the classic film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but I'm more of a cereal-based cultural referencer, so that's where I'm going with.
I mean, and it's not just because you yourself are part of the 1980s commercial industry as a child star.
Yes, that's right.
What was the product you were?
I was in a product called Men of Metal. Yes, we've played the commercial, I think, before on the show. Maybe one day we'll bring it back. But listen, we do have other matters to get to, as important as
almost as important
as this discussion is. There also is this thing going on where the Washington Post reported on Friday that after one of those Trump administration strikes on boats in the Caribbean, where they claim they're going after cartels, when at worst they're going after like random drug couriers who are bringing drugs over, not even to the U.S., but to like another part of the Caribbean, and we're just assassinating people in the high seas. After one of these strikes, there were 2 survivors clinging to the wreckage of a ship, and the U.S. military went ahead and killed them. And according to the Washington Post, this was done on the direct orders of Pete Hegseth. And now we have an outcry about that. So here's Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Let me ask you about that Washington Post report on the attack on that Venezuelan alleged drug boat. What do you make of what happened there? Do you think there was a war crime committed?
Oh, I think it's very possible there was a war crime committed. Of course, for it to be a war crime, you have to accept the Trump administration's whole construct here.
That we're at war.
Which is we're in armed conflict at war with the drug gangs. Of course, they've never presented the public with the information they've got here. But it could be worse than that, right? If that theory is wrong, then it's plain murder.
The first strike is murder in that case.
That's correct.
You're alleging.
That's correct. Well, I'm saying that it's either murder from the first strike if their whole theory is wrong, and I think the weight of the legal opinion here is that they've concocted this ridiculous legal theory. But even if you accept their legal theory, that it is a war crime. And so I do believe that the Secretary of Defense should be held accountable for giving those kind of orders.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And he makes a good point. He makes a good point there. That, like, to call this a war crime, you have to accept that we're in a war on random boats, which is fair, and also against drug cartels, which the Trump administration claims the Venezuelan government basically is a giant drug cartel, which of course is a complete lie. But yeah, look, maybe we'll start seeing. Is it possible we'll start seeing some congressional pushback on randomly assassinating people on boats just because we claim that they're running drugs to the U.S. even though there's no evidence of that?
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's especially disgusting. The whole thing is disgusting, but doing that to people clinging to a boat who are survivors of an attack is especially disgusting. Because obviously they were not a threat at that point. Not that they were ever a threat, but again, if you're even going to accept the Trump framing, even concede their construction. But also, that's a good point. Muada Garai, right? It can also be called terrorism. That is true. I mean, the range is from a war crime to murder to terrorism. And I think that Van Hollen does a good job. Not all Democrats are as kind of unequivocal in their condemnation of this. And I also want to give Van Hollen a shout out because he was actually used his position as a member of Congress to push for the release of Mohammed Ibrahim, who was the 16-year-old U.S. citizen of Palestinian descent who was locked up by an Israeli in an Israeli prison without trial. He's finally been released, and that is thanks in part to the major activism of his family, the tireless activism of his family. Also, Jasper Nathaniel did important reporting on this story, and Van Hollen actually did. But just it's pathetic that he stands out when that is something that all members of Congress should have been demanding. And Mohammed is back with his family. He's lost tons of weight. The before and after photos are disgusting. And this again is Mohammed was not only tortured in an Israeli prison, his cousin Saif was murdered by settlers. And then with the help of soldiers who slowed down the ambulance trying to get him medical assistance. And Saif was 20, I believe, 20 or 21, and Mohammed was 15 when he was in prison and is now 16.
If this were like a like a white Christian American kid held by a foreign government, everybody would know his name.
Yeah,
because he is a Palestinian American. He's now 16 years old. Everybody yawned. It was fine for Israel to hold him in prison in a gulag for more than 9 months, subjected him to horrible conditions. And yeah, if not for the activism of his family, if not for also, as you mentioned, previous Youth Latest guest Jasper Nathaniel, he might still be behind bars. So it's a rare thing to celebrate. But the fact that it's even a story is just it's such an outrage.
Right. And shock of all shocks. But Republicans from Florida, which is where Mohammed is and his family are based, said nothing. All the Republicans, Maxwell Frost may have said something, but I'm not sure. But none of the Republicans did. Brian Mast obviously didn't because he's an Israel firster. He likes to wear his IDF uniform in Congress. Randy Fine is the biggest sociopath. And of course, Ron DeSantis didn't do anything about it.
All right. Well, we have a lot more on the killings of people on boats in the Caribbean. Here's Senator Mark Kelly.
On what CNN is reporting, what the Washington Post is reporting, do you believe if there was a second strike to eliminate any survivors, that constitutes a war crime?
It seems to. If that is true, if what has been reported is accurate, I've got serious concerns about anybody in that chain of command stepping over a line that they should never step over. We are not Russia. We're not Iraq. We hold ourselves to a very high standard of professionalism. And this is where I'm really troubled about this, is because I have so much respect for people in the United States Navy. I served in the Navy for 25 years, and there is no organization more professional than Navy SEALs, and they should be revered.
Did he say we're not? He said we're not Russia, and then he said we're not Iraq
Iraq.
or
Iraq.
Iran.
He said Iraq. I think he messed up his talking points, but it's
so,
actually interesting to say Iraq.
it-
Yeah.
It's just so funny that he mentions he says we're not Iraq when like as if Iraq is like the model for bad behavior when we're the ones who invaded Iraq
Exactly. Right.
and killed
Right.
hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people and set the region on fire. So
Yeah. Exactly.
really picked the wrong country to use as your U.S. whitewashing talking point.
Yeah. It's your teachable moment. Let's just see the very.
And that's why I say I hope what I've heard about this strike is not accurate.
I mean, okay, so here's like a teachable moment, much like he makes a teachable moment or tries to out of Russia and Iraq. This is not the way you do it. This is the way that Van Hollen, Senator Van Hollen, is the way that you do it. And by the way, I think I said Congress before. He's a senator, not a member of Congress. But this is such a kind of mealy-mouthed condemnation. He hopes it's not true. Like, why would it not be true? I mean, you sound almost like a Republican. And in fact, we're going to hear that in some ways he's probably less condemning than Republicans are. But yeah, this whole we're not Russia, we're China. Well, what's interesting is that there's actually a famous case, the Peleus case. That's the name of a ship. In World War II, the British tried and executed German officers for murdering shipwrecked sailors, including the captain who ordered this, Heinz Wilhelm Eck. He was executed over this. So, maybe the better analogy is we're not China. We're not Russia or Iraq. We are Nazis.
Yeah, if you wanted to say, we're not Israel in that, like, we
Right.
don't pin 2 million people in a concentration camp and then commit mass murder for 2 years. I mean, you could say that, even though, of course, that wouldn't quite work because we supported Israel in doing that. So, but in terms of like, if you want to do the whole like moral equivalency thing, slim pickings. If you're the U.S. and you want to try to take the high ground here,
Right.
yeah. And again, it's just so funny he picked Iraq
I know.
as an example because we invaded. Like, yeah, we're not Iraq because unlike Iraq, we invade people and occupy them and
Yeah,
destroy their
exactly.
country.
Also, this is such a classic whitewashing of U.S. military history, right? I mean, how many examples do we need to provide of the U.S. military being totally unethical? It's not like we are a beacon of morality and ethics. I mean, anything from like I don't know, Agent Orange, napalm in Vietnam, Abu Ghraib. I mean, again, we can't be here all day. Or else if we try to give more all the examples, fueling the genocide in Gaza. So this idea that, this is below military, what the American military does is laughable.
I was just reading recently about a massacre I didn't know about by the U.S. in the Philippines in the early 1900s of just U.S. forces in the Philippines. And of course, when we were there, we were supposed to be there on a civilizing mission. We were going to be like benevolent occupiers. Of course, that was all a lie. And there was a slaughter of Moro people, hundreds of them, in the most gruesome ways. And of course, it was presented here as like as a wonderful thing. It was totally whitewashed, and it's the kind of thing where it was just no one acknowledged it for decades. And then finally, decades later, yeah, the truth comes out. But how many times has that happened, and how many massacres do we not even know about? And that's just what happens in history. The atrocity is committed, it gets forgotten, and maybe if we're lucky, decades later, the truth can be acknowledged.
Right. Yeah. And that massacre killed hundreds of men, women, and children. And that's Moro, M-O-R-O, by the way, Moro, because that's what they call the Muslim Filipinos, like the Moors. Yeah.
Okay. Let's get to more. So, okay, we've heard some mild criticism of Trump's strikes on boats in the Caribbean. Let's hear a defense from Senator Eric Schmidt.
Force it on land as well. He wants the airspace over Venezuela to be stopped so that he can help control the trafficking in this coming into this country. Your thoughts on this situation? Tom Homan mentioned we have a massive drug problem that's part of this overall picture that we're dealing with.
I'm just so glad we have a president that's focused on the homeland and our hemisphere. I think for decades, there have been too many of the Washington elite and permanent Washington that have been focused on fighting wars for other countries and far off places, as opposed to taking care of business here at home. So
I love this. I love this talking point. So if you're assassinating random people in the Caribbean, if you're fomenting regime change in Venezuela, you're anti-elite. You know, these out of touch elites in Washington have been, waging their regime change campaigns, far overseas, like in the Middle East. Really, if you're really in touch with like the grassroots of this country, with the heartland, you'll be waging regime change wars closer to home. In our
Exactly.
hemisphere.
Yeah, manifest
Venezuela.
destiny is what the working man wants. That's what blue collar workers want, is regime change in our backyard, not far away. Keep it farm. What is it? Local. Keep like farm fresh, farm to table, war crimes or terrorism.
Yeah.
So disgusting. I like that. That's pretty creative, though. Yeah.
whether it was discussion about Greenland, whether it was the Panama Canal, or now this cartel activity you see where the boats are being blown out of the water, this is a real focus on what's close to home for us and making sure that we take care of. I mean, as Tom Homan just said, we've effectively closed the border. So they've gone onto the high seas. And these narco terrorists don't have the right to poison 100,000 Americans every year. So I think it's a two-part strategy. One is to get rid of the precursors that are coming from China and then take out the cartels that are distributing this and bringing it to the United States of America. President Trump is well within his Article 2 powers, and the Democrats are playing a very dangerous game here by encouraging service members to disobey orders, to break the chain of command. All they have left, Jackie, is they can't believe that he won. They can't believe he got his cabinet in. They can't believe he's delivering on his promises, so they want to sow chaos now. And I think we just have to stand up and say, that's nonsense. President Trump has the ability to do it, and he should do it.
Yeah, he does.
I think you're right.
He does have the ability to do it, and that's the problem. That doesn't mean he should do it. But someone just pointed this out. I mean, Ray Bob won. Yeah, thanks for pointing this out. Greenland is close to home. Like that's backyard regime change, or
if you're a visionary like Trump, if you believe in America, then you believe that America has no bounds.
It's true, right?
America's everywhere. America's with all of us, including all around the world. And it also means if you care about Americans, you have to somehow raise food prices for average Venezuelan families, as U.S. sanctions do.
Right.
Make life there very, very difficult for working people, because that's the point of sanctions, is to destroy economies. And by the way, this whole thing, again, it's so cynical about all this anti-immigrant talk from Trump defenders, is his policies create the very same migrants that he then demonizes to get elected. So if you don't like people coming here, or you want to close the border, if that's your thing, okay, stop creating migrants by destroying other people's economies. John Bolton admitted that, our sanctions destroyed Venezuela's economy even more and caused people to flee. That was an acceptable price because, again, the goal here is regime change. And regime change has nothing to do with drug cartels or stopping migrants. It has to do with taking over a country that's outside of our control. And in the case of Venezuela, they have the world's largest reserves of oil.
Right. But I just do love the framing that interference in the Americas is okay. The Americas plus Greenland, but not in the Middle East. And as if he ran on this, he's pretending this was part of his Schmidt is pretending this was part of his election promise. Don't think so.
Yeah, I don't recall Trump running on regime change in Venezuela.
Yeah,
I don't recall that being part of his campaign pledge. Now, granted, he did do that he did try that in his first term. So maybe some people will vote for him. Obviously, some people in Florida, hardliners who want regime change, voted for him in the hope that he would revive that. But that wasn't a big part of his overall campaign message. Yeah, we're going to keep sanctions that destroy Venezuela's economy, cause migrants, that keep fuel prices higher here, and we're going to escalate that regime change campaign that he started in his first term. Yeah.
Now, I just want to say that I think your point about the creating migration through murderous sanctions and destabilizing governments is true, but that's not the moral framing that I subscribe to. To me, that doesn't determine. In other words, I'm not that you're saying this, but I don't like xenophobia and race baiting and pitting people against each other to distract from the crimes of the elites, even if we're not destabilizing those governments.
Okay,
Oh,
let's
and
turn.
climate change too. We definitely create migration through climate change.
All right, let's turn to some more defenses of Trump's assassination and regime change policy. Here's Senator Markwayne Mullin.
To new details we're learning about the U.S. attacks on a suspected drug boat, which have killed dozens of people. Now, sources tell CNN that in the first strike in September, one missile disabled the ship and killed many of the crew members. But when some survived that first strike, the military launched a second strike to kill anyone who was left. And these individuals were apparently unarmed, already injured from the original attack. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, I don't know if I believe that at all, because we're doing alleged sources. Nothing has been verified by this. We do know that a survivor that did survive.
I think he means anonymous sources, but whatevs.
In later attacks was picked up by the United States Coast Guard or Navy, I'm not for sure, and was sent back to his country. You guys reported on that. So I doubt very seriously that took place. And unless there was more to.
Yes, somebody was sent back from one of these strikes. But funnily enough, the fact that the person was sent back to their home country and not extradited to the U.S. for being part of a drug cartel shows you that these strikes are just complete lies. If we really were attacking people who are part of like a massive drug cartel conspiracy to flood the U.S. with drugs, and to the point where they have to be assassinated, why would we then be sending them back to their home country and not extraditing them here to be put on trial, and where you can show all the evidence we have of them being part of some massive drug cartel? And like, why would, or at least like interrogate them to try to flip them and get evidence against, I don't know, Nicolas Maduro, who's supposedly heading the drug cartel that they're ferrying drugs for. Instead, it's like, sorry, like okay, all right, we tried to kill you, it didn't work out. We claimed falsely you were part of a drug cartel. Let's just send you back home and let bygones be bygones.
Yes, important point.
The story that the boat was enabled again and they were trying to run again, I don't know, but I don't think this story is accurate. And we keep talking about something that's alleged. It's alleged. It's not, nothing's been proven at all about this. No one's come out and said it was accurate. It's just somebody by an alleged source that anybody can name or make up that this supposedly took place.
Well, the Republican chairman of your committee, Armed Services, in the Senate, and the Republican chair of the House Armed Services Committee have both taken see enough credence in this that they say that they are investigating in a bipartisan way, which we haven't seen a lot of in this administration so far. They're promising vigorous oversight.
All right. Well, it's all alleged. It's all alleged. Who knows what's even true or false anymore? I mean, like, what is truth? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. At the end of the day,
It's very postmodern.
It is. Yeah.
Like, we don't know what we don't know, like, what the truth is here. We don't know what are sources.
Exactly.
What even is a source?
What is what?
Sure.
I think that's what is. Bill Clinton said something like that.
It depends what your definition of is.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Homeland Security Secretary.
And by the way, just really quickly, I mean, Bash raises an important point, which is that like GOP committee chairs, key GOP committee chairs in both houses have announced that they're going to do oversight investigations into the strike. So obviously these allegations are serious enough to warrant that. In fact, let's do and also two reports from separate reporters were told practically the same thing. So that's another thing to bear in mind. Washington Post and CNN. But let's actually go to clip 6, and then we'll go to Noam, because I think this is an important thing to interject. Let's take a look at what Representative Don Bacon had to say about these alleged strikes, and let's compare that to what Markwayne Mullin just said.
Ask you about the story we've been discussing this morning, the Venezuelan alleged drug boat that was struck one time, but then a second time as two survivors were clinging to the wreckage of the boat. Your committee, you're on the Armed Services Committee, is going to be investigating this, according to your chairman. How concerned are you that this may have been a real violation of the way, even if there's a question of whether or not we're at war, but that this would violate the laws of warfare?
Well, it is a big concern. Now, Secretary of Defense Hegseth denies it. we should get to the truth. I don't think he would be foolish enough to make this decision to say, kill everybody, kill the survivors, because that's a clear violation of the law of war. So I'm very suspicious that he would have done something like that, because it would go against common sense. So let's get the facts. And if the facts go to where the Washington Post article takes it, well, then we'll have to go from there. But if it was as if the article said, that is a violation of the law of war. When people want to surrender, you don't kill them. And they have to pose an imminent threat. It's hard to believe that two people on a raft trying to survive would pose an imminent threat. So let's get the facts first. The Secretary of Hegseth deserves his day to present his side of the story.
So I like that approach. He's skeptical, but at least he does say, let's get the facts. So again, giving much more credence to this than Markwayne Mullin. And so this, I mean, the significance here, I think, is that we're seeing another example of Trump and having kind of like a Trump MAGA wing, but then not having a total lock on the entire party.
Well, John Bacon, wow. I mean, he's I know him as a staunch militarist, and
Right.
So that's that's refreshing to hear from him. But for the contrary point of view, let's hear from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem.
Ask you about another question.
During that period of time.
There's a Washington Post report that one of those Venezuelan boats that was attacked by a U.S. missile, alleged drug boats, that a second missile was launched because there had been two survivors clinging to the wreckage of the boat. I know this was obviously carried out by the Defense Department, but is the administration concerned here that that may have violated the laws of war? I mean, was there an imminent threat posed by those people that were clinging to the wreckage of a boat that had already been struck?
Oh, John, that entire story is based on anonymous sources. So we see the press and we see that rag use anonymous sources all the time to print things that aren't true, that are lies, that are completely not based in reality. So I would not put any credibility to that story, to what was said. I have full faith and trust in this president and in this government to do the right thing to keep the American people safe. And I'm so grateful at the amount of work that has been done to stop those deadly drugs from getting into our country.
So yeah, you have look.
And by the way, she said rag. I thought she said reg, but yeah, sorry. Keep going, Aaron.
There will be a congressional investigation of this, and so I think all these denials are going to look pretty silly in retrospect. But like, regardless of what happened, even in this one incident, you have such an absolutely ludicrous policy of just killing random people. There's no evidence at all that anybody is bringing drugs to the U.S. And even if they were bringing drugs to the U.S., you still can't kill them. The Associated Press recently did an investigation where they interviewed some of the family members of some of the people who were killed, and yeah, some of them were running drugs. That was happening, but these are, like, the picture that is painted is these are just random people trying to feed their families, and they're not bringing like, the boats can't even reach the U.S. They're going to other parts of the Caribbean. The whole thing is just such it's just one of many outrages that is just completely normalized under this administration.
Right, and again, that's not a capital offense. You don't get to assassinate or execute people for that.
Yeah,
even if it were true.
Yeah. All right. Well, all this is part of a larger effort to regime change Venezuela. And the pretext for regime changing Venezuela is that Nicolas Maduro is the head of a drug cartel. And if we want to stop drugs coming to the U.S., we have to overthrow the entire government in Venezuela, which just happens to have the world's largest reserves of oil, and where we just happen to have been trying to regime change the government for more than 20 years, going back to Hugo Chavez. And why is that? Because they're outside of our control. They've used their resources to have social programs that benefit, the forgotten, impoverished people of the country. Where in Latin America, it's supposed to go where the U.S. works with local elites who control everything and leave the majority of the population on the outskirts and not involved in society. And Venezuela changed that model and has tried to, support other countries that pursue similar agendas. So therefore, they have to go. And meanwhile, the irony of going after Venezuela and trying regime change on the pretext that Maduro is heading a drug cartel, for which, again, there's no evidence, is that Trump just said he's going to pardon Juan Orlando Hernandez. He's the former president of Honduras. He was convicted of being part of a massive narco trafficking organization that raked in millions of dollars for drug cartels and keeping Honduras impoverished and full of violence. And he even accepted a $1 million bribe from arguably the most notorious drug cartel, the El Chapo cartel. And he even once was said to have boasted that he's going to, quote, stuff the drugs up the gringos' noses. So the guy who once promised to stuff the drugs up the gringos' noses is now set to receive a pardon from Donald Trump. And why? Because he's an ally of the right-wing faction in Honduras who appears to have just won this weekend's election. And Trump, ahead of that election, basically threatened the people of Venezuela that if you vote for the left-wingers, we're going to punish you and we're not going to work with you. And so as part of that, the convicted narco trafficker, former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, gets a Trump pardon, just as Trump is vowing to regime change Venezuela on the fictitious claim that Nicolas Maduro is a drug boss.
Because he cares that much about drugs.
It's just so unbelievable. So anyway, here is Mark Wayne Mullen having to defend Trump pardoning a convicted narco trafficker.
Presidential power is pretty much absolute, and I get that. But as an ally of the president, as a senator, you, I'm sure, have an opinion. Is, on the one hand, threatening Venezuela and Maduro, while on the Maduro, and on the other hand, saying that you're going to pardon a guy who was convicted in an American justice system for doing exactly what you're saying, intentionally poisoning Americans with drugs. Is that a good idea?
Well, I wasn't involved in the conversations that he had with the president of Honduras at the time. I believe there's probably a good faith that is being stretched forth here. If you saw the true
good faith that is being stretched forth, that's an interesting turn of phrase.
Social post he put out, there was a direct message. I guarantee you the president's foreign affairs approach is one that's being very effective around the world, a lot better than the Biden administration. That's why world leaders are coming in every single day wanting to visit with the president. That's why the president is able to stop 8 foreign wars and hopefully 9 if we can hopefully negotiate a deal between Ukraine and Russia, because the world leaders respect him. And so what the president is doing is always calculated. And I haven't had a direct conversation with the president about it, but I do trust his natural reaction and his approach to foreign affairs, because we can see it's being very, very effective.
I want to turn.
Well, there we go. If you're a Trump apologist, you're gonna have to, and good luck with this one. You have to go around defending him pardoning a convicted narco trafficker who took bribes from cartels. By the way, also there was a murder in a prison that was caught on video of a informant used in his case. It's so unbelievably gruesome. He's shot to death in a prison. And so if you're a Trump defender now, you're going to be charged with the task of going out there and defending Trump pardoning this former president of Honduras, who was convicted. I mean, imagine if you're like working in the DEA. This was a huge case.
Right.
He was extradited to the U.S. This was a major, major, major case. And now Trump goes ahead and says he's going to pardon him. It's just staggering what he's able to get away with.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All these people who believe in the American justice system, all these conservatives should be really up in arms about this. But excuse me. But the other thing is since Mark Wayne Mullen is so adamant about ignoring things that are, again, he kept saying alleged sources. I'm pretty sure he meant anonymous sources. This, I guess, goes without saying, but it's a good reminder that there's a reason that sources are sometimes anonymous, and especially when you have Trump. I mean, we've seen how vindictive he's been. Everyone from, including, Marjorie Taylor Greene. So it's no wonder that these people are being anonymous, and this is kind of what whistleblowers often are. They're anonymous. So. Not that Mark Wayne Mullen probably knows or cares about that, but it is worth bearing in mind.
Okay, let's hear from another cheerleader for Trump's regime change policy in Venezuela. This is Congressmember Maria Elvira Salazar from Florida. She's going to make the case why regime change in Venezuela is going to go great and why it's such a good thing.
She says, no, you cannot run. Politically speaking, according to this law, that other law.
They said you had corruption charges.
Whatever. And then she says, okay, no problem. I'm not running as president. Let me put this nice gentleman in Mundo Gonzalez.
How long before this happens? What is your prediction? Before Christmas?
Imminent, because
we're on the verge. You're saying within days we're going to see something happen.
Because this is what we did with Iran, that we gave ample notice to the commercial airlines, do not overfly the Venezuela. That's exactly what the president has done. And now this is not going to be hard. 80% of the Venezuelans voted for the opposition. You have 8 million Venezuelans in exile. We're talking about the largest reserves of oil in the world that will be doing business with the American oil company.
What does the fact that Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world have to do with whether or not this will be easy or not? She's saying this is not going to be hard. Like regime change, don't worry about it. They have the biggest oil reserves in the world. Like, so wait, are the oil reserves going to join the revolution against Maduro backed by the U.S.? Like the oil reserves are going to they're going to refuse to come out of the ground until Maduro's ousted. The whole thing's very silly. And yes, her assurance is that things are going to go well. You know, we've heard that before. We heard that in Libya, we heard that in Iraq, we heard that in Syria. Not so much of a track record for regime change advocates saying things are going to go well. That's putting aside the fact that we have no right to overthrow a foreign government. There's something called international law. And it's just, but look, this is just what we reserve the right to do. And what we also reserve the right to do is just control another country's airspace. So as was mentioned there in that clip, Trump over the weekend put out a Truth Social saying, consider Venezuela's airspace closed. So no flights should go there. Like, who is Trump to decide that? It's such a violation of sovereignty. And now, according to reports, Trump is meeting with his national security cabinet today to discuss what is next. And he's talked openly about U.S. military strikes. So perhaps that is coming. And I just wonder, where's Tulsi Gabbard? Tulsi Gabbard is his director of national intelligence. In Trump's first term, when she was not in Trump's administration, she was constantly saying Trump's regime change campaign in Venezuela is an outrage, and she was vocally against it. So where is she now?
Yeah.
Where are all the so-called America Firsters who voted for Trump because he's supposedly anti-regime change and anti-foreign wars? Where are they now?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this is just another example of saying the quiet part aloud. I actually appreciate that. By talking about the oil.
All right. Well, there's a whole other work.
Before we shift to Russia, let's do that Kristi Noem. There's a great clip of Kristi Noem being asked about a judge's ruling by Jonathan Karl. Let's take a look at that.
Before you go, as you know, a U.S. district judge has now reopened a contempt inquiry into the decision to fly those planes of Venezuelan immigrants, alleged gang members, to El Salvador after he ordered the planes to be turned around. In a DOJ filing, the Department of Justice says that you were the one that made that order. So I have two questions on that. First of all, is that right? Does the buck effectively stop with you on this? Was this your responsibility? And had you known that the judge had ordered those planes to be turned around when that order was issued?
Yes, I made that decision, and that decision was under my complete authority and following the law and the Constitution and the leadership of this president, who is dedicated to getting dangerous criminal terrorists and gangs and cartels out of our country. And I'm so grateful that we get the opportunity every day to do that and to make decisions that will keep America safe.
Did you know about the judge's order when you issued your order for the planes to
Yeah,
continue?
this is an activist judge, and I understand, we're still in litigation with this against this activist judge who's continuously tried to stop us from protecting the American people. We continue to win. His ridiculous claims are not in good standing with the law or the Constitution. We'll win this one as well, and we comply with all federal orders that are lawful and binding, and we will continue to do that. But I'm proud of the decisions that I've made, proud to work for this president each and every day to keep America safe.
All right.
So let's talk about this activist judge, as she describes him. So here's what you should know about this quote unquote activist judge. By the way, his name is, sorry, I have it right here. Where is this? Okay, Judge James E. Boasberg, and he's so activisty that he was appointed to a court by both Bush and Obama. He also was attended Yale University, where he was a member of Skull and Bones. He attended Yale Law School, where he was a classmate of and lived in a group house with Brett Kavanaugh. And then for some trivia, he's 6'6" tall, played basketball at Yale, and also worked as a history teacher and women's basketball coach at Horace Mann in New York City.
Well, sounds like a typical bleeding heart liberal activist judge right there, member of the Skull and Bones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a whole other conflict going on, and that's the whole proxy war in Ukraine, which Trump, to his credit, and this is where actually he's somewhat following through on his pledges to stop endless wars. Too bad he's escalating them pretty much everywhere else. But on this one, I think he deserves credit for doing what Joe Biden refused to do, which is even talk to the Russians. Imagine that, talking to the world's other top nuclear power who can destroy the world with their nuclear arsenal many times over, and talk about not fueling a conflict that has killed hundreds of thousands of people. Why not? Right? Well, Joe Biden apparently thought otherwise, and so that's why I think we're in the mess we're in today. But the problem with Trump is he's appointed a bunch of neocons, including Marco Rubio, who were totally fine with Joe Biden's policy. And he faces a entrenched bipartisan establishment in Washington that just can't get around the idea of making peace, especially with Russia, who everyone's conditioned to hate because of, the whole Cold War thing, and Russiagate didn't help as well. But anyway, there's an attempt, and there are meetings going on right now. There was just one on Sunday between Marco Rubio and some Ukrainian officials. There's been a lot of turmoil in Ukraine recently, where Zelensky fired his very powerful chief of staff, Andrei Yermak, and this has come to Zelensky's under scrutiny for a corruption scandal that's implicated his inner circle. There's a lot going on. So how are war hawks in Washington handling the prospect, just the prospect of peace? Well, here is Republican Congress member Mike Turner.
The team of Ukrainian negotiators is meeting right now in Miami with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. What's your understanding of where the negotiations stand right now? There were concerns initially that the White House plan was too pro-Russia. Do you still have those concerns?
Well, I think we all have those concerns. The president's goal of peace is incredibly important, and we saw today with Secretary Rubio his statement of we have to have a strong and sovereign Ukraine, and that's everyone's goal, and certainly a prosperous Ukraine. And we saw the Ukrainian representative there who is committed, and we certainly think, and I think everyone thinks that President Zelensky is committed to peace. But one thing that I think everybody understands is that you can't be America first and pro-Russia. Because Russia is a self-declared adversary of the United States. It's fielding new advanced nuclear weapons that are.
They're actually not a self-declared adversary of the U.S. This is like a constant talking point where you hear about like Putin's a sworn enemy of the U.S. No, he's not actually. What he would often say in talking about countries, including the U.S., was these are our partners. He would constantly refer to our partners. He even still says that sometimes, even though we're locked in a proxy war against his government, spending tens of billions of dollars trying to destroy his army and crush his economy. So it's only war hawks in Washington who have made themselves sworn enemies of Russia by trying to destroy it and weaken it with their proxy war strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. No one would ever make that point, right? I mean, we would if he came on our show, but
Yeah, of course. I mean, there's just on television, there's
Yeah.
certain red lines you don't cross, and one of them is, don't challenge any propaganda that fuels conflict with Russia. To their credit, on the regime change campaign in Venezuela, there is some pushback. Okay, that's good. I guess that's because it's just so ridiculous. This
'Cause it's
idea
so
of
over the top. Yeah.
declaring Maduro a drug boss meanwhile, we're literally pardoning a convicted narco trafficker, the former president of Honduras. So, but yeah, with Russia, forget it. And also, we can thank Russiagate for that. But here's more from Mike Turner.
Specifically targeting the United States. It's constantly attacking the United States with offensive cyber. It continuously identifies both NATO and the West, the United States, as its adversary.
Yeah, we identify Russia as our adversary constantly. Right. And so when in that situation, someone's going to respond. So, for example, fomenting a coup or backing a coup in Ukraine in 2014, Russia responded to that. And not addressing the roots of all that has been the cause of conflict for a very long time. And what's so funny? He says, Russia is constantly attacking the United States. And what's the best example he can come up with? He says cyber, right? And what's he referring to? He's referring to the stupid and now debunked Russian hacking allegations in 2016, where the allegation that Russia stole some Democratic Party emails, gave them to WikiLeaks, that was used for a massive fear-mongering campaign to make it look as if Russia was trying to destroy our society. And as I've written about, all the evidence for that Russian hacking allegation shows that it's false. There's nothing to support it. Everything that's come out undermines it. Unfortunately, you'll never hear it covered on corporate media TV, but like we've covered it, and it's there. But it just shows you what one of the purposes, one of the uses of Russiagate was. It was to help, demonize Russia, raise tensions with it, and give war hawks something that they can use to argue to liberals why we should have constant conflict with Russia. And it's really worked. It's really worked.
So in this, and of course, when it identifies Ukraine as its adversary, it does so in identifying the West and the United States as its adversary. You have to understand that the balance of this peace arrangement has to be one where you have to look at Russia as a skeptical adversary.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike Turner. Yes. He just hates the idea of admitting defeat in the proxy war that he supported for a very, very long time. And as we've talked about, there were so many opportunities to end the war, to avoid the invasion before it happened. After it happened, you had the peace talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul, which Boris Johnson and Joe Biden sabotaged. Boris Johnson, by the way, is a lot more honest. He'll say that, if we lose in Ukraine, this will be a blow to Western hegemony and that this is a proxy war. So yes, like the talking point that we're just helping Ukraine defend itself and blah, blah, blah. No, more honest people like Boris Johnson acknowledge that this is all about expanding Western hegemony.
And he would know because he actually went there. He actually told Zelensky not to negotiate with Putin.
That's correct. That's correct.
And he does call it a proxy war. But also, one question I have for Mike Turner is he says it's not America first to be pro-Russia. I wonder, is it America first to be pro-Israel? And this is someone, it's interesting to note, who has received over $164,000 from AIPAC.
Well, Katie, the answer to your question is yes. It is America first, because that's what people like Lindsey Graham do. They'll be like, America first, like we're America first, and that means putting Israel first because Israel is our ally and blah 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 blah.
Special relationship, yeah.
America first is the most malleable, meaningless term, really, in the U.S. political lexicon. It means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's whatever you want it to be.
Yes. Okay, let's hear from another supporter of the proxy war, the aforementioned Congressmember Don Bacon.
Let me start right there with the words we just heard from the president. He says the Russian concessions would be they stop the war. I mean, what do you think is going on here?
Well, that should be the concession, that Russia stops the war. But you get mixed signals from the White House, and I wish they'd be more clear. The initial peace agreement from last week was Ukraine had to give up more land, had to reduce the size of its army, would have to not be allowed to join NATO. You couldn't allow foreign troops into Ukraine. It really was a surrender document that would have left Ukraine weak and vulnerable to Russia for decades to come.
The saddest thing about that, he's referring to this, leaked 28-point peace plan. The sad thing about calling a surrender document to Russia is that for Russia, it wasn't even acceptable. And
Right.
you know, why that's sad is if you're not even accepting that as a basis for discussion, you're just condemning more Ukrainians to die, because whatever you think about the causes of the war, you know, who's right, who's wrong, the factual background that, of course, never gets covered on these shows. The fact is, whatever you think about that, Ukraine is losing. It's running out of people. It's mired in this corruption scandal. People are fed up. It's increasingly vulnerable to Russia's attacks. In the first few years of the war, Russia kind of avoided, for the most part, Ukraine's power grid. Now it's taken the gloves off, and it's really it's engaged in collective punishment. It's bombing Ukraine's power grid with real intensity, and it's making civilians suffer. One of the reasons why Russia didn't touch the power grid as much in the first years is that Ukraine at that point was still transiting Russian gas, which is just amazing. Like, even though we're waging this supposed existential war with Russia, and Ukraine was still letting Russia transit gas because Ukraine made money off of that.
Right.
And so anyway, now that's over. And so Russia's engaged in increased collective punishment. So it's Ukrainians who are losing the war. And still, this 28-point peace plan, it proposed a limit on Ukraine's army that Russia would actually never accept. The limit was something like 600,000. Whereas in Istanbul a few years ago, Russia and Ukraine were talking about like 60,000 troops at most. And yes, Ukraine not joining NATO, that's seen as a surrender. That literally was in Ukraine's Declaration of State Sovereignty. 1990. Ukraine aims to be a permanently neutral state. So what's now being said to be a surrender to Russia it was conventional wisdom in Ukraine for a long, long time before the U.S. started meddling and trying to bring it into NATO. Before George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, in their infinite wisdom, pushed through a pledge promising Ukraine NATO membership, even at a time when the majority of Ukrainians, this is 2008, didn't even want to be a part of NATO. And now we're saying that, recognizing the reality that Ukraine's losing and has no viable path to victory, and yes, is not going to join NATO, that's somehow a surrender to Russia.
If only you were on these shows, Aaron.
I do think that agreement has shifted a little more back towards the middle, but I would like to see the president be a stronger advocate for the free country, the sovereign country of Ukraine that wants to be a democracy, wants to be allied with us, and have a little more clear-eyed view of who Putin is. That, you know, Putin's the invader, he's the dictator, he's murdered all of his opponents. But I just don't see that moral clarity coming from the White House. And, you know, we saw that Wall Street Journal article yesterday that many people around the president are hoping to make billions of dollars. These are all billionaires in their own right, from an agreement from Russia if they get a favorable agreement with Ukraine. That alarms me tremendously.
Well, John Bacon is now against war profiteering in Ukraine. I somehow doubt that extends to other countries. And it's true. Listen, there are people around Trump who are like, why are we fueling this war? Let's just make money with Russia.
Right.
And, you know, there's a lot of money to be made. And yes, that is their concern. But personally, I think a little war profiteering is a lot better than fueling a war that will kill hundreds of thousands of more people. You know, like unfortunately, that's just the cold reality here. That, like, whatever you think about who's right or who's wrong, with what could have been avoided, the fact is Ukraine's running out of people to fight, and they're only losing more territory. And the trajectory of the war so far has been Russia, uses its size advantage to just wait out Ukraine, slowly take more territory, and that's the way it's going. So people like Don Bacon claiming to defend Ukraine, they're only advocating ultimately its continued destruction.
Yeah, I mean, it's pathetic. Basically, the choices are, make money off of Russia or bleed Russia. Like the Biden plan, right, was to bleed Russia, degrade Russia, and that meant literally killing Ukrainians in the name of doing that, and of course Russians. So there you have it. There are the two options.
All right. Well, it was just the Thanksgiving holiday, and for some reason in this country, we decide to follow up a holiday meant to, give thanks, be grateful, be with family, with a crazy shopping day known as Black Friday. And so here's the top White House economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, with his take on how great the economy is this Black Friday.
New surveys from Goldman Sachs and Bank of America that paint a modest picture of the holiday spending outlook. They say low and middle income Americans are planning to pull back a little bit because they perceive that prices are higher. And they say if spending is up this year, it's going to be because goods in part are more expensive. Is this the temporary result or long-term result of the Trump tariffs?
Right. Well, what we've seen, those were reports about what people anticipated would happen over the Thanksgiving weekend, but we now have hard data for Black Friday and even for Saturday, and the online sales were up almost 10%, in-store sales were up 4%. It was really a blockbuster weekend after Thanksgiving. And so I think that the folks who were saying, wow, maybe people are going to be anxious about, going back and getting presents for the kids and so on, they've been disproven this week. And then I think the reason is that incomes are up this year. We had a great jobs report, and with strong income and the government shut down over so that people presumably have a little pent-up demand as well. I think that we're looking at a great recovery from a few weeks because of the shutdown.
Sure. I'm wondering how much of that spending increase you think is attributable to the fact that prices are up. Let me give you an example. The maker of Tonka trucks said a couple days ago that a toy truck that cost $30 last year is going to cost $40 this year, partly because they lost about 8 weeks of shipping due to the U.S. trade war with China. What's your advice to holiday shoppers who don't want to spend more this year than they did last year or can't afford to spend more?
Right. Well, as you know, it depends on what you're looking at. Like egg prices are down, gasoline prices drop below $2 a gallon in a lot of places.
You mean
mortgage
below?
rates are down.
Gas prices on average are still at $3 a gallon.
Yeah, that's right.
Country,
For a few states, they got below $2. And so the point is just that in the end, what matters is in the aggregate, the average across everything that everybody buys. And that averaged about 5% under Joe Biden and is a little bit above 2.5%, about cut in half for President Trump. And the bottom line, though, is really that wages have been growing faster than prices, and that's why real incomes this year are up by about $1,200 so far. That's why we could have a great Black Friday and a great Thanksgiving sales weekend, because people feel like they have more money in their pockets. Even though you're right, there are some things that cost more and some things that cost less. But on average, we're about half the inflation rate of Joe Biden.
Okay, so a couple things. Like she just pointed out, the interviewer, part of the reason that that the spending is up is because things are more expensive. And the other thing is he's talking about an average, and that's because like what we're seeing now is, excuse me, it's an economic concept known as a K-shaped economy, because it's the people who make more money are spending more. So it goes like that. And this, again, does not mean that people at the bottom are doing better, right? So this is something that we see. Rich people keep spending more money. Those in lower income brackets don't. And it's also a distortion of reality, because the top 10% of income earners accounted for 49.2% of total spending in the second quarter of this year, according to Bloomberg.
Yeah, and this idea like wages are growing, like for who?
Right.
Everyone knows that like wages have been stagnant since the 1970s, that like wages are in no way correlated to economic productivity, because all the gains have gone to the top. Like everyone knows that. So I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Especially for low wage workers.
Right.
Like
who he doesn't care about, though, obviously.
Yeah. But he's like, everyone feels as if they have more money in their pocket. Well, I don't know who he's talking to, but I doubt it's any working people.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the show. Should we do one more clip?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Tim Walz. He's the he's the governor of Minnesota, the former vice presidential running mate on that campaign we all want to forget, Kamala Harris's 2024 campaign. He's got, I guess he has a new book out or something. Anyway, he's back on the scene, and
or Kamala's new book out. Yeah.
What does he think about Kamala Harris running again in 2028?
Yeah, and first we're going to hear what Kamala Harris has to say about that, about her race. Then we're going to hear his response to that.
A couple more to get to here. I want to talk about the Democrats. You were, of course, the Democratic vice presidential nominee in 2024 because President Biden dropped out over concerns about his fitness for office. Vice President Harris, in her new book, said it was, quote, recklessness for former President Biden's allies to leave the decision about running for re-election up to him and his family. Do you agree with her? Was it recklessness?
Well, why didn't she do something about it, by the way? I mean, she could have pushed for not listening to his family. I'm sure she could have done stuff within the party to pressure him to step down, but let's go. Let's keep going.
Look, I wasn't there, Kristen, on this, and I think the president, again, got us through COVID, ushered us through, brought the economy back from the edge. I think there's questions about this, and I want to be very clear. On me talking about the MRI, ageism is a real thing. Ableism is a real thing that we need to be careful of with people, and I think
It's kind of throwing Biden under the bus there by saying ableism is a real thing, by the way. I mean, I don't think anyone accused him of an ability issue. Yeah, cognitive stuff about age, but he's kind of making it more of a problematic analysis and diagnosis of Biden. But let's fast forward and hear what he has to say about Kamala running again.
And the MRI is a reference to him calling for the release of Trump's MRI.
Right, yes.
Because Trump might be facing some cognitive issues of his own.
Right.
Turn to the future. Former Vice President Kamala Harris has left the door open to potentially run for office again. Do you still think she's the strongest person to run for president in 2028?
Well, I'm glad she's out there, and I'm glad a whole lot of other people are out there, because I think Donald Trump sucks up so much oxygen. We need to have the Democratic Party out on the field, the broad, inclusive Democratic Party, talking about making life more affordable, talking about protecting freedoms, and I think Kamala Harris does a wonderful job with that. If she chooses to run, that betters all of us. We will have the process. We'll go through. I'm sure there'll be a lot of folks throw their hat into the ring, but that's good, and we need to make sure that we're providing the alternative that America's asking for. If they're going to elect us, we need to make sure healthcare costs come down. We need to make sure prices come down. We need to make sure that we're addressing the things that they care about, whether it's clean water or protecting environment. Those are things they want to see us get done. And I think she had a message last year that I'm proud of. I
don't know what that message was, by the way, and neither did voters.
Did it break through enough? Obviously not, but it's still a message that works, making sure that America is affordable for all, people feel included, and we tackle the toughest problem.
You know, it's interesting because what this clip shows us is that nobody has learned the lesson. So Kamala Harris blames Biden for her loss instead of looking at what she did. And while he's talking about important issues, and they are important issues, affordability, healthcare, climate change, what was the most important issue according to voters who voted for Biden last time but didn't vote for Harris this time? It was Gaza. So no, he doesn't mention that issue. And that, again, forget the morality. Obviously, you and I feel very strongly about Gaza being the moral issue of our time. If you want to win, maybe you should pay attention to the thing that people found very important.
Yeah, they're just not prepared to do that yet. Kamala Harris in her book talked about how she tried to get Joe Biden to care about Palestinians, and he didn't. She just said he just wasn't capable of doing that. But then the question is, why didn't you?
Right. When you were running.
Yes. Why did you distance yourself from the guy who couldn't care about Palestinians?
Right. And because she, like all Democrats, care more about norms than power.
And those norms include endorsing genocide.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. Well, all right. We've come to the end of Monday morning. Katie, anything you want to promote this week for the Katie Halper Show?
Yeah, we're going to have a great show tomorrow with Palestine Youth Movement, PYM. Some other great guests are going to be thrown into the mix that are top secret and will be announced later. But that's at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show at 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Eastern time. Okay. Yeah. That is our show. Our website is usefulidiots.podcast.com. Go there to support us, keep the show going, and get bonus content. Thanks for watching Monday morning. We'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.